Hello, and welcome to History Homework. This is our look at Alexander the Great, Part 3. Indian Campaign. After the death of Spitamenes and his marriage to Roxana, Rakshana in Old Iranian, to cement relations with his new satrapies, Alexander turned to the Indian subcontinent. He invited the chieftains of the former satrapy of Gandhara, a region presently straddling eastern Afghanistan and northern Pakistan, to come to him and submit to his authority. Amphis, Indian name Ambi, the ruler of Taxila, whose kingdom extended from the Indus to the Hydaspes, Jhelum, complied, but the chieftains of some hill clans, including the Aspagioi and Asakanoi sections of the Kamboyas, known in Indian texts also as Ashvayanas and Ashvakayanas, refused to submit. Ambi hastened to relieve Alexander of his apprehension and met him with valuable presents, placing himself and all his forces at his disposal. Alexander not only returned Ambi his title and the gifts, but he also presented him with a wardrobe of Persian robes, gold and silver ornaments, 30 horses and 1,000 talents in gold. Alexander was emboldened to divide his forces, and Ambi assisted Hephaestion and Perdiccas in constructing a bridge over the Indus where it bends at Hund, supplied their troops with provisions, and received Alexander himself, and his whole army, in his capital city of Taxila, with every demonstration of friendship and the most liberal hospitality. On the subsequent advance of the Macedonian king, Taxiles accompanied him with a force of 5,000 men and took part in the Battle of the Hydaspes River. After that victory he was sent by Alexander in pursuit of Porus, to whom he was charged to offer favorable terms, but narrowly escaped losing his life at the hands of his old enemy. Subsequently, however, the two rivals were reconciled by the personal mediation of Alexander, and Taxiles, after having contributed zealously to the equipment of the fleet on the Hydaspes, was entrusted by the king with the government. In the winter of 327–326 BC, Alexander personally led a campaign against the Aspagioi of Kuna valleys, the Gurians of the Guraeus valley, and the Asakanoi of the Swat and Bunner valleys. A fierce contest ensued with the Aspagioi in which Alexander was wounded in the shoulder by a dart, but eventually the Aspagioi lost. Alexander then faced the Asakanoi, who fought against him from the strongholds of Masaga, Ora and Aornos. The fort of Masaga was reduced only after days of bloody fighting, in which Alexander was wounded seriously in the ankle. According to Curtius, not only did Alexander slaughter the entire population of Masaga, but also did he reduce its buildings to rubble. A similar slaughter followed at Ora. In the aftermath of Masaga and Ora, numerous Asakanians fled to the fortress of Aornos. Alexander followed close behind and captured the strategic hill fort after 4 bloody days. After Aornos, Alexander crossed the Indus and fought and won an epic battle against King Porus, who ruled a region lying between the Hydaspes and the Assassines, Chenab, in what is now the Punjab, in the Battle of the Hydaspes in 326 BC. Alexander was impressed by Porus's bravery, and made him an ally. He appointed Porus as satrap, and added to Porus's territory land that he did not previously own, towards the southeast, up to the Hyphasis, Bs. Choosing a local helped him control these lands so distant from Greece. Alexander founded 2 cities on opposite sides of the Hydaspes River, naming one Bucephala, in honor of his horse, who died around this time. The other was Nicaea, Victory, thought to be located at the site of modern-day Maung, Punjab. Revolt of the army. East of Porus's kingdom, near the Ganges River, was the Nanda Empire of Magadha, and further east, the Gangaridai Empire of Bengal region of the Indian subcontinent. Fearing the prospect of facing other large armies and exhausted by years of campaigning, Alexander's army mutinied at the Hyphasis River, Bs, refusing to march farther east. This river thus marks the easternmost extent of Alexander's conquests. Alexander tried to persuade his soldiers to march farther, but his general Coenus pleaded with him to change his opinion and return. The men, he said, longed to again see their parents, their wives and children, their homeland. Alexander eventually agreed and turned south, marching along the Indus. Along the way his army conquered the Mali, in modern-day Multan, and other Indian tribes, and Alexander sustained an injury during the siege. Alexander sent much of his army to Carmania, modern southern Iran, with General Craterus, and commissioned a fleet to explore the Persian Gulf shore under his admiral Nearchus, while he led the rest back to Persia through the more difficult southern route along the Gadrosian Desert and Makran. Alexander reached Susa in 324 BC, but not before losing many men to the harsh desert. Last years in Persia. Discovering that many of his satraps and military governors had misbehaved in his absence, Alexander executed several of them as examples on his way to Susa. As a gesture of thanks, he paid off the debts of his soldiers, and announced that he would send over aged and disabled veterans back to Macedon, led by Craterus. His troops misunderstood his intention and mutinied at the town of Opis. They refused to be sent away and criticized his adoption of Persian customs and dress and the introduction of Persian officers and soldiers into Macedonian units. After 3 days, unable to persuade his men to back down, Alexander gave Persians command posts in the army and conferred Macedonian military titles upon Persian units. The Macedonians quickly begged forgiveness, which Alexander accepted, and held a great banquet with several thousand of his men. In an attempt to craft a lasting harmony between his Macedonian and Persian subjects, Alexander held a mass marriage of his senior officers to Persian and other noblewomen at Susa, but few of those marriages seem to have lasted much beyond a year. Meanwhile, upon his return to Persia, Alexander learned that guards of the tomb of Cyrus the Great in Pasargadae had desecrated it, and swiftly executed them. Alexander admired Cyrus the Great, from an early age reading Xenophon's Cyropaedia, which described Cyrus's heroism in battle and governance as a king and legislator. During his visit to Pasargadae, Alexander ordered his architect Aristobulus to decorate the interior of the sepulchral chamber of Cyrus's tomb. Afterwards, Alexander traveled to Ecbatana to retrieve the bulk of the Persian treasure. There, his closest friend and possible lover, Hephaestion, died of illness or poisoning. Hephaestion's death devastated Alexander, and he ordered the preparation of an expensive funeral pyre in Babylon, as well as a decree for public mourning. Back in Babylon, Alexander planned a series of new campaigns, beginning with an invasion of Arabia, but he would not have a chance to realize them, as he died shortly after Hephaestion's death and succession. On either 10 or the 11th of June 323 BC, Alexander died in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar II, in Babylon, at age 32. There are 2 different versions of Alexander's death, and details of the death differ slightly in each. Plutarch's account is that roughly 14 days before his death, Alexander entertained Admiral Nearchus and spent the night and next day drinking with Medius of Larissa. He developed a fever, which worsened until he was unable to speak. The common soldiers, anxious about his health, were granted the right to file past him as he silently waved at them. In the second account, Diodorus recounts that Alexander was struck with pain after downing a large bowl of unmixed wine in honor of Heracles, followed by 11 days of weakness. He did not develop a fever, instead dying after some agony. Given the propensity of the Macedonian aristocracy to assassination, foul play featured in multiple accounts of his death. Diodorus, Plutarch, Arrian and Justin all mentioned the theory that Alexander was poisoned. After death, Alexander's body was laid in a gold anthropoid sarcophagus that was filled with honey, which was in turn placed in a gold casket. According to Aelian, a seer called Aristander foretold that the land where Alexander was laid to rest would be happy and unvanquishable forever. While Alexander's funeral cortege was on its way to Macedon, Ptolemy seized it and took it temporarily to Memphis. His successor, Ptolemy II Philadelphus, transferred the sarcophagus to Alexandria, where it remained until at least late antiquity. Thank you so much for watching History Homework. This has been our 3rd and final part looking at Alexander the Great. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.